I want to introduce to you the next speaker, who is Evangelos Ioannidis. He is from an interfaculty program on complex systems at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. He has worked on this presentation together with Morteza Nikrawan, who will come on stage after the talk, right?
So good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you, everyone, for being here today and express my thanks to Academia Ellenberg and the financial supporters for offering me this opportunity, as well as Professor Atmasmacher for his guidance at the summer school in Basel. I'm going to present you the topic of bounded rationality, and this work has been done together with my partner Morteza Nikrawan. This is short CVs, let me say it, of the two contributors of this presentation, me and Morteza Nikrawan. And the agenda of the presentation covers concepts like decision-making and rationality, bounded rationality as introduced by Herbert Simon, heuristics approach to decision-making, ecological rationality as introduced by Gerd Ginziger. We will discuss the relationship between rationality and interconnectedness. And then we shall proceed to applications like Internet of Things, Fourth Industrial Revolution, Semantic Web, and at the end of the presentation, I will finish with the concluding remarks. So, we may say that we are our choices. It says that our choices influence, direct or indirectly, our future. So, having this as starting point, we may first define what is a choice. A choice may be defined as the passing from all several potentialities to the single one actualization. Let's give an example of a rational decision. Suppose that customer A offers you 10 francs for your product, and customer B offers you 20 francs for your product. Probably, I say probably, you will choose customer B. This is the best choice. In economics, this is called as the rational agent assumption. Many economic theories were built in this assumption. But now there is a hot research topic, the behavioral finance, which is not based on this assumption and states that the assumption may be driven by emotions. So let's give some definitions. What is decision-making? Decision-making is a cognitive process resulting in a choice according to certain criteria in the frame of a model. And what is a rational agent? A rational agent is a decision maker who fulfills these conditions, these three conditions. First, is always aware of all available potentialities and probabilities. In the language of mathematics, we may say that he knows the sample space and, moreover, the probability distribution over the sample space. Second, he has well-defined preferences. The utility function over the sample space is well-defined. And the third condition is that always selects the optimal decision. In the language of mathematics, he maximizes always the expected utility. But in practice, agents make their decisions under bounded rationality due to limited available resources. We make decisions under imperfect knowledge. So the limitations of available cognitive capabilities, computational intelligence, data information, budget, and time form the bounds of computability, accuracy, predictability, or in general, we may say, the bounds of decidability. Here, we have the Professor Herbert Simon, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1978, who catched the idea of bounded rationality, and he said that as agents are not able to implement the optimal decision, they actually act as satisficers. And below I give the mathematical definition of epsilon optimization. It has not appeared very well, but it says that you cannot implement the optimal decision. You can only implement decisions that are far from the optimal one. How far is the question? Epsilon. This is the distance of the decision that you can implement from the optimal one. So what is the problem? Why we are here? Why we are studying limits? How to minimize the epsilon bound effectively? This is the context of my presentation. And as you can see, I have in bold the word effectively. This is the crucial part of this sentence. That's why. You see the thinker and the doer? The doer implements the decision, and the thinker is still thinking which decision to implement. And there is a threshold where we implement the decision. After this time, we implement the decision, and we will discuss this limit. And below, I have a topic. I have a quotation from a famous racing driver, Mario Andretti, who said that if everything seems under control, you are just not going fast enough, in order to highlight this fact. So the approach in order to overcome with the problem of taking decisions under limited time is the heuristics approach. What is the heuristic technique? It's a fast and frugal decision-making method which is based on a simple rule: efficient for fast decision-making under limited resources or uncertainty. In other words, we may say that heuristics is a mental shortcut, or in the language of medicine, it's a bypass using ad hoc selected simplifying assumptions. Examples of the heuristic approach to decision-making is the greedy algorithm, which considers only the immediate benefit, and the trial and error. Let's give an example of heuristic approach to the greedy algorithm. You see here, the goal is to reach the largest sum. You start from here, 7, and you are in front of two possibilities. Suppose that you do not see the second step. 3 and 12. Of course, you choose 12 in order to maximize your sum. But if you come here to 12, you will be in front of 5 and 6. And of course, you will be here and the sum will be much lower compared to this scenario. So you can see that the visibility plays a crucial role in decision-making, how far we can see, in order to implement decisions that are closer as much as possible to the optimal one. And here, suppose that this is the space of solutions. You start from this point, A, and of course you go right, because you maximize your sum. And finally, you will be there at this point, which is a local maximum, not the global one. In other words, greedy algorithms cannot find the global maximum. You are trapped in the local maximum. But I have to say that this kind of algorithm, it's very light in computing. Another example of a heuristic approach is the gaze approach. And who does this calculation to catch a ball? Obviously, no one. What we do actually? We adjust our motion to catch the ball using one variable only. We simplify the problem in order to act in a little time interval. You see, we fix our gaze on the ball, start running, and we adjust our running speed so that the angle of the gaze remains constant. This is a very simple way in order to catch the ball. We simplify the whole process. And here is Professor Gerd Ginzinger, who introduced the concepts of adaptive toolbox and ecological rationality. And he said that heuristics are evolving. In fact, they are continuously shaped by evolution and learning via feedback loop, resulting into their adaptation within a specific environment. In other words, heuristics are tailored to the specific environment that we act. And having this in mind, we may define ecological rationality. You see here, a heuristic is ecologically rational to the degree that it is adapted to an environment. This is, of course, a biological evolutionary approach to decision making. And we may say in this way that the heuristics co-evolve within their environment. So, at this step, I want to put another question on the table, which is rationality related to interconnectedness? In other words, a higher level of interconnectedness could help me to take better decisions closer to the optimal one. And if yes, how? If there are any examples towards this direction? We see here in this picture the decisions of these agents here are crucial. In fact, they are vital for their survival. And that is the reason that I chose this picture. Because you have to do decisions, you have to make decisions close to the optimal one. And you can see here the added value of interconnecting the all parts, all the agents together. They interact together, they get feedback loop, and you see all this stuff acts as one. There is a self-organizing behavior, and that is due to interconnectedness. And the decisions of these agents are characterized by a higher level of rationality. In other words, higher interconnectedness expands the bounds of the rationality of the agents. Another example from our real life is access to web. Suppose that you have two smartphones, similar smartphones, and only one of them has access to web. Imagine for a little how value is lost when you do not have access on web. So be linked with the web, with other people, could help me to take better decisions and find the best way, choose the best decision in order to reach the place that I want to go. And here we come to the network effect. Network effect is the phenomenon that emerges where more and more users are joining in the network. Sorry. The more users joining in the network, the more value give and eventually gain from the network. This is called the network effect. So if more and more we are connected on the web, we exchange information, we interact each other, and in this way, we can make better decisions. In other words, we have a greater awareness of our environment, and therefore, we can implement better decisions, closer to the optimal one. The epsilon bound is lower. The value that you gain from being in the network depends critically on the number of interconnected users. And more specifically, the value of the network is analogous to the n squared, where n is the number of nodes. And this is the Metcalfe's law, which is behind the network effect, we may say. And as you see there, on the y-axis we have time, and on the z-axis we have the size of the network. So as the time goes by, the size of the networks grows. But there is a critical mass depending on the structure of the network and other conditions, where after this point, the size of the network grows super exponentially. So here we have another limit. And this is, I mean, the network effect in this figure there. This is the business model of modern companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, Uber, and all that, on this kind of companies. They based on this effect, on network effect. And network effect is behind Internet of Things. That it is we may say that it is an application of the network effect, it's exploitation of the network effect in order to make better decisions. Living beings, people, and non-living entities, things, interact and decide in real time, forming a complex adaptive system, allowing their harmonious symbiosis. You see, when connecting all the devices together, they can communicate and take better decisions without having this in mind, actually, in our minds. They communicate alone. Of course, we're programming it, but after we're programming it, it can work automatically. And now there is another research topic which is not Internet of Things, but Internet of Nano Things, that it's related to the concept that we put small chips into our body in order, and these chips communicate and exchange information among them, and we can monitor in real time our health. So we are connected with a database, and we can implement better decisions. and forecast. And forecast maybe potential threats for our health. And here we have the fourth industrial revolution, which was the main topic discussed in Davos. And industrial revolution concerns cyber physical systems, you see here. The machineries communicate, and they do all the work without any other control. They are self-organized. Another way, let me say it like this. They self-organized, and this is very helpful to the production process. Cyber-physical systems are in fact interconnected mechatronics that they can communicate together based on computer algorithms. Huge companies like IBM, Intel, and General Electric are already involved towards this direction. And this is a tangible proof that we are going towards this direction. And all these have a specific goal. What is the goal? To minimize the epsilon bound, to have better decisions, real-time decisions, because everything is dynamic. The best decision now maybe will not be the best decision after 2 minutes, 1 minute, or 1 second in finance, for example. Yes, okay, so we may say that we are convinced that networking is good, but when we connect users means people and devices, we have something like this. You see, the growth in the Internet of Things, the number of connected devices will exceed 50 billion by 2020. So there are many connected devices, and you see here, more users, more data. We need a smarter algorithm to deal with them in order to deliver better service. And this is a circle that we have to overcome with this problem. I mean, more data. There is a huge production of data when many users are connected on the web or on a specific platform. How can I deal with this tremendously production of data? In other words, how data can help me to take rational decisions effectively? This is a big question, and we have to overcome in order to see the added value of networks in decision-making, in the context of decision-making. So, what is the meaning of data, and what is their significance? Yes, we have data, and so what? Can we exploit them effectively? And we can answer this question. We can exploit data if we change the way of processing data. We need semantic information processing and pragmatic information processing. These new ways, let me say it, of processing information will lead to a complexity reduction, a syntactic complexity reduction. And what is semantic information? You don't see data as a syntax. You don't see the letters. You understand the meaning of the word. So when I say cat, you do not understand C-A-T. You understand that there is an animal, it has a tail, and so on. There are many things that comes to your mind when I say a word. This is semantic network. You see how the concepts are interrelated. So semantic networks are networks of semantic relations between concepts. In other words, if data are linked, they create context. And ontology is a semantic network together with the relevant inference rule. You see, I put an inference rule on this network in order to take decisions. And this is the so-called semantic web. W3C consortium works towards this direction, and Tim Berners-Lee was one of the pioneers towards this direction. And linked data, we may say that are structured data by interlinking them in order to become more useful when questioning and taking decisions. So, to sum up, we see that a higher level of interconnectedness may help us to do better decision making. In other words, to have a smaller epsilon bound that I showed you before. And maybe we can have systemic heuristics. You remember the approach of Professor Gerd Zinziger? You may have heuristics based on the systemic awareness of the whole network. So we can combine the heuristic approach and the higher level of interconnectedness. And the proof of my say is the fourth industrial revolution and the Internet of Things, and all such companies that they work towards this direction. The second remark is that considering software aspects, semantic information processing is needed in order to deal with big data effectively in real time. And this is the vision of a semantic web that I hope that will help humanity to make better decisions and make our life better. And the last concluding remark that I want to stress is that, okay, we connect each other, we make better decisions, and all of us, we are linked on the web. What if there is a cyber attack? We put all the eggs on the same basket, in the same basket. So what if this basket fails? If there is a cascading failure? So we have this point that when more and more people and devices become interconnected, the damage of a potential information warfare increases. So we have to take care of this threat in order not to have unexpected results. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evangelos. This raises a lot of very interesting questions and even detailed questions, right?
Yes.
Which you may express now. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have one question. You define decision-making as a cognitive process. However, I think you would also agree with me that decision-making is also a social process, is also an ethical process and stuff. So my thesis goes in the direction of the network effect. The more people that are involved, the more data we have, the better decisions we can make. Now, I would ask you the question, isn't it also true that the more interconnected we are, the more people are participating in decision-making? that the more difficult it gets to make decisions, because there are multiple perspectives. It's not like in a company where there is one common goal that you make a decision for, but if we talk about societies, we have conflicting ethical perspectives, we have conflicting norms, values. So, and any algorithm cannot help us. So my thesis would be, and I would like to know how you see this, we don't need smarter algorithms, but we need smarter dialogue and smarter discussions in society. So.
Okay. Thank you for your question. First, I want to say that this cognitive process that I said, which is decision making, you can see it at the social level. There is a, let me say, a cognitive social process when there is a decision making in the sense that you say the dialogue. When I said that Internet of Things and network effects will allow us to take better decisions, I meant that decisions like that I shown, for example, which road to take in order to go to my place. You refer to decisions like policy making. Of course, crucial decisions that they are subjective and controversial cannot be implemented by artificial kind of stuff. But we can use artificial decision-making chips in order to implement decisions that are algorithmic somehow. Of course, decisions that they need some critical thinking to take crucial decisions about humanity as a whole cannot be relied on this system thinking. Of course, we can exploit the feedback, but not leave it alone to take decisions for us. This is my point.
Thank you. Here I want to introduce to you Morteza Nikrawan from Tehran, Iran. And since you're here, my question to you is, do you have any additional information, complementations to what he was saying right now? You want to bring something up?
Can you? Yeah. Maybe I added some things about the heuristic approach because our actually work is to read the books from Professor Gingers. You can see the heuristic approach even in the animal. For example, the peahen mat choice. You know, the peahen is a very beautiful bird that actually lift his wing, let's say wing or feathers. But when the mat wanted to choose the male peahen, he just looked at some peahen, and he decided between 3 or 4 mat with optimal heuristic approach. So he choose when the mat has the more eye spout in the fear. So this is the heuristic choice when they wanted to make a choice between different mat. Another thing that we discussed together, that is the more information it not means more satisfy or more better choice. The interaction between the data and the linked data is very important. I mean, nowadays we bombard with a lot of information, but it's very important that how we interaction together to achieve the limitation. So this is something that we wanted to conclude, that the web of things or Internet of Things is important, not the quantity of data or the number of data.
Thank you very much. And since you say this,
okay,
I just wanted to ask you maybe a question, maybe also make a commentary. I mean, when we talk about big data science, which everybody in the sciences talks about now, not only in biology, in many other fields, Then, of course, we all also know that when we analyze big databases for correlations or for significant connections or whatever, then most of the, I mean, if it's a big database really, then most of the correlations that we find are spurious. Are spurious. They are apparent, but they're spurious in the sense that they have statistical significance, but they don't mean anything.
Exactly.
Right? Now, this is why the approach, the move to the semantic web or to semantic databases is so important, because when you represent your data at the semantic rather than the syntactic, the purely syntactic level, then you, first of all, you reduce syntactic complexity, that's what you said, but also you move to a level where you have the semantics already implemented.
Yes.
So you don't have to check your statistically significant correlations at the syntactic level in addition for the semantic significance. It's already built in. Is that the way you are thinking?
Yes. Semantic processing can implement automatic inference. For example, let's say that all participants of the Basel school will be here. I was a participant in the Basel school, so I'm here. This inference cannot be automatically implemented with the relational databases. You have to see it and statistically justify it. But when you have an ontology, you can automatically have the inference. It is not needed to see it statistically.
Yes.
You have already put it on the semantic network.
So that's a really powerful idea, but we're not there yet, right? Is that already?
Yes, the main problem to have semantic web on matters is that we cannot agree, all of us, to a single inference rule. For example, we cannot agree, all of us, that this is the inference rule with respect to a specific semantic network. For example, we agree that this is, we all agree that this is a screen, but this is a toy thing, a toy question. But in more deep questions, we cannot easily agree what will be the inference rule. And this problem is facing the W3C consortium, which works towards this direction, to build universal inference rules.
We could agree, though, on an inference rule given a specific context.
Exactly.
Right?
Or specific communities that they agree to the concept.
So anyway, we don't want to dominate this. Please ask questions.
Thank you for this very good speech. I would like to ask you, how do human values relate to this data assembly? How do human values contribute to the decision making?
When we discuss about values, this is a subjective context. I have maybe other values that Morteza has, for example. So rationality, in this way, loses its universality. So I don't have an idea how values can have added value to data. I think that data come without any value. The value is being assigned from us. I don't know if I'm clear. That I'm saying that when you deal with data, the way of interpreting the data and the values that every one of us we have will lead him or her to interpret data in a different way. Mm-hmm. We see the same data, but we have a different semantic information on this data. And this is due to different value. This is the value function that you mentioned, actually. Yes?
This is not a discussion now, but it might be worthwhile to once look back at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that were signed off in 1948, because it's universal Declaration of Human Rights, not personal. It's universal.
Yes, I agree with this.
Right.
But this is a specific paradigm, the human rights. There are other paradigms that there are not so universal like human rights, that we may all agree on this. There are some other issues that we may do not agree. The value that you mentioned is the significance and the semantic information of data.
Other hands raised? Yes, down there.
I would like to bring in a more philosophical perspective. We have been talking about things that make our lives better somehow. And I wonder where we actually, as humanity, want to grow up to. What's actually the ultimate goal of all the research we're doing, of all the limits we want to pass over? Where do we want to go? Because in an economic perspective, the marginal utility somehow decreases at a certain point. When we have the basic limits or the basic needs which are covered. And I think that's a really important question with all the research we are doing, with all the limits we want to get over. What's the actual goal of humanity? Where do we want to go to? I don't have a question to that, or an answer to that question, but I think that's always a thing to think about.
So your question is what humanity wants and what are the limits of... I didn't understand actually the question.
No, her question was, given all these efforts that we're making, for instance, to make the epsilon as small as possible, for instance.
Yeah.
What's the underlying purpose? What do we want? Where do we want to go as humanity as a whole, right? Yeah.
Yes, as you've seen, I defined rationality as agents that they have well-defined preferences. If we do not know what we want, then how to proceed? This is an open issue, what humanity wants eventually, and how all this research and all this effort goes to. But when we have specific, well-defined preferences, then we can implement it in a better way when we have a better awareness of our environment. But firstly, we must specify what we want, what are our preferences. This is a starting point, I think.
There may be another point that you actually raised in your presentation, one of the first slides, when you said you were talking about the most rational choice, and then you said, but there is another approach in which not only rational choices are relevant, but also emotional choices. That would open up
the behavioral finance, as I said.
Maybe I added something, Carol, because I think this is a very basic philosophy question, but maybe I just say that there is a book, The Paradox of the Choice, and say that why more is less. I mean, this talk about the satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So maybe sometimes the more choice is less satisfaction or less happy, but maybe come back to your question. I think that if you are satisfied with your choice, it's not important, is it rational or not sometimes? Because maybe a very good question that Professor Gingers asked in the video, say that you choose your husband or wife rationally. So who is in the salon choose actually his partner very rationally. But sometimes we are to satisfy with the choice. As you are satisfied with your way or with your life, so it's okay. You know, it's like, because sometimes the rational choice is not the satisfaction or preferred choice.
We may implement the best decision from the rational point of view, but we may not be satisfied.
Down there, yes. White shirt with a tie.
I would like to follow on that question. I mean, I cannot possibly speak for mankind, of course, but as a researcher and an engineer, I'd say what drives me out of bed every morning is the curiosity to see what is possible and how it is possible. It is a very deep sort of satisfaction to prove that something is possible to do. And I guess that's why mankind made a race to bring a few of us up to the moon. I mean, there was basically no point to it, except, it was a sort of political, military game between East and West. But in the end, why did we go to all of this huge effort? I think it's just human to want to do things, and we are willing to take a certain risk for that.
I'm not sure about this particular example. Generally, I have some sympathy with it, but this particular example might not, I don't know, it may not be the best one, because if you ask John F. Kennedy, he would have said, we have to show it to the Russians, you know. It's not curiosity. We have to show it to them. I don't know, but this is just the one example. Any other questions, commentaries? Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
I think in your model you stick to the idea that there are given preferences, and what we know is that preferences develop during the decision process, during collecting data, and this refers to the philosophical argument as well. So, do we know what we want? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. So it develops, and I would make the statement that. The real decisions are undecidable. So once you have a choice between alternatives and you choose the best one, it's a sort of mechanical thing. You find the best thing, and you have more or less information about that. But in real life, and you mentioned that choosing a partner, it's not really choosing between 3 or 4 alternatives and making what are the good and bad things and so on, then you choose one. So it's a sort of intuition, and in a real decision you go one path and you leave things behind which would have been good as well, but you will never know because you couldn't walk this path. So I think in this way real decisions are undecidable in a way, and always a matter of conflicts of interests.
Yes, I agree that the difficult work is to put the question properly. When you put the question in the right context, and you have specific preferences, then everything is going very well mechanically, let me say. But yes, the difficult work is to put the question down. So in this line of thought, we cannot decide. We cannot decide at the highest level. We cannot decide with the optimal way. This is the undecidability that you mentioned.
And you had, in your presentation, you had some conditions for rationality in general.
Yes.
Like you have to know the sample space.
Of course.
You have to know a probability distribution over the potentialities. In many cases, we know neither of those.
I want us to make a remark here. What is this is the difference between risk assessment and heuristic approach or intuition. Risk assessment, in fact, needs to know all the potentialities, the sample space, and moreover the probabilities of the probabilities over this sample space and the outcomes. This is huge information that you have to know in order to do the statistics and all this risk assessment process. So, if in practice, you don't know even the possible outcomes. And this is the added value of interconnecting. When you are better interconnected, you have a better awareness, a higher level of visibility of the possible outcomes, and you can assess better the probability distribution of these events and outcomes. Yes?
Another question in the back row, left-hand side.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
As I understand it, when you talk about connectedness, you basically mean getting more information about your decisions. Can you imagine situations where it is unhelpful to have more information about your decisions? Or do you think that holds true in general, that it is good to have as much information as you can gather?
Contradicting information, incompatible databases, something like that.
No, not even. But sometimes that not knowing about the sample space, for example, can be beneficial.
So you mean that not knowing is better than knowing?
Thank you. No, but from your presentation, like I think your point is that when you talk about network effects and interconnectedness, basically it means gathering more and more information.
Yes.
That's the impression I have. And then you claim that it leads to better decisions. And I agree that this is the case often, but I'm not sure if it is always the case, and I'm wondering if you can think about situations where it may not be the case, where it may be better not to know everything we know, or everything we could know.
I think that it is better the psychological aspect of taking the decision, because if you know what is the decision that you took, you have the power, but you have also the responsibility for taking the decision. But when you don't know, you are out of responsibility. So I think it's also the responsibility of the decision making that you can face when you are aware of your decision. So I don't know. I think that data can help us to make better decisions, but if we want to be aware of the decisions that we take and take the responsibility of these decisions over our shoulders, this is another question. I think.
Morteza, final word?
Maybe I reworded again this question. I think maybe this question is very good, that what data is good to make for us to make a decision. I mean, we have a lot of data, and we think what data is good to make a decision. Maybe mechanically is we can formulate it. Maybe you added some things about the internet.
I think that the question is not proper. They are not good and bad data. It's a matter of how they are interpreted and connected by us. They're not bad data or good data. It's our fault if we do not interpret it well, the data. Our fault. We can, maybe I don't say it very well, but data are facts. There are illustration on numbers, with numbers, the facts. We quantify somehow the facts. This is data.
However, if you go to the semantic level, as you suggested yourself, right?
Yes.
Then, of course, you can have data which are more meaningful for a certain context again.
Yes.
So we come back to the context question.
Yes.
And then, I mean, what you actually mean is good is meaningful and bad is
Yes.
meaningless somehow. I would put it
In the
that way.
semantic context,
Yeah.
data attain the good or the bad meaning.
Yeah.